folks. It's Cheryl Arkeson here, coming to you live on Instagram for the Quilters Playcation Adventure Sewalong 2024 version, where our inspiration is rainbows. Because who doesn't love a rainbow, right? We all love a rainbow. One way or another, we all love a rainbow. So, it's February 6th already. I know, January flew by. Everyone says it's so long, but just flew by for me. I'm laughing at myself because I did not notice it earlier, but I had to take one of the kids to a cardiologist appointment this morning. So that's a heart doctor. And this was the sweater I wore. It looked like I was just a little bit of a nerd when it came down to it, but that's all right. It's a cozy sweater and I like it. Found it at Marshall's. Score for me. Anyways, it is a foggy day. We had some snow recently. Hello, puppy. You guys want to see the puppy? He's so big now. So big. He's sitting down. Oh, careful. There he is. Say hi, Elmer. Oh, look at that smile. Say hi. Gotta show the puppy, right? What else is new? Not much. We got winter back. It was really warm. We got winter back and we're ready to sew. So today's block, there you go. You can see it there, right? See all of them together right there. Today's block, I had the scraps out from last week's block and I thought, well, if I sew all those triangles that I cut out, then I can make this strip. Now, fair warning, I did not tell you to save those triangles. So if you didn't, or they got mixed in with the rest of your scraps, whatever, that's fine. All you need to do is either find them if they're easily accessible, or just cut some triangles from your fabric. You only need little pieces, little triangles, so it's not that big of a deal. I had the scraps out. And so that was what gave me inspiration for the block, was to cut the scraps. I did have to dig for the black, white, and gray ones, and actually had to cut a few of those because I didn't have as many there. I think I had more because I did that block twice. So that's what happened. So that's what we're going to go with, is using up those scraps paired with our background fabric for this diagonal one. I'm going to tell you this now and I'll tell you it later, because lots of people are kind of doing their own thing. You know, they take inspiration from what I'm doing and then they do their own thing, which is awesome. Love it. I've already got a block designed that has a horizontal or vertical line that is somewhat similar to this. So go with the diagonal. Doesn't mean you have to go corner to corner diagonal, but to distinguish it from that block later on the line, stick with the diagonal on today's block, okay? So we'll go with that. Now I'm going to head over to the sewing table, and I realized I have my thing backwards. So I'm just going to have to flip that around. Hello to the folks saying hello. There we go. Hi. Now I'll be able to get her down. Just do that carefully so I don't hang up on you. I did it. Okay, let's flip that camera around. We'll say hello to the ladies. Hello to my sewing table. We're going to set you up like that because you can see me at the machine and cutting here and my afternoon tea, because I needed that. My son is home again. Insomnia is getting him down, which is just doing a number on him. Anyways, so he is home, but he is going to take the dog for a walk here shortly to get some fresh air to hopefully help with that insomnia. So what do we have for needed materials today? We need our triangle scraps. So you can see with mine, I have some that are, you know, more of that right triangle, some that are that kind of equilateral triangle there. Hello, hello to folks joining. They're all kind of different. It really doesn't matter. In all likelihood, your points are going to get cut off when you straighten out your strip. So don't stress about that. We're just really, our goal is to use the fabric as we have it. So in this case, I'm going from light to dark in the center and then from dark to light on the end. And I'm crossing my fingers that this results in a strip long enough. It may or may not. I'll figure it out. If it's not, on the one that I did in my pastel grunge, right, I did two rainbows, and then realized I wasn't quite long enough. So it was as if I was doing another rainbow. I probably should have I added on either end. I probably should have just slid them down and had a third rainbow, but it works. It works. There's no hard and fast rules on these things. I am merely here as a suggestion. So once you have kind of the order that you want them in, once you've cut out any extra pieces, and I just freehand cut the couple, right, that I needed here, we're just going to go and sew them. I'm going to make life easier and more efficient and do some chain piecing. So I'll sew the first pair together, second pair, third pair, fourth pair, and on, press those, then do the next round, that sort of thing. It just makes life a little more efficient instead of going one by one by one. Remember, have a nice neutral thread in your machine. And again, because I'm not too concerned about my points, because I'm pretty sure they'll get cut off, I'm not really worried about where these line up. I'm just trying to, if they're roughly the same size, kind of line them up. If they're large and I overlap, then I overlap. But it's nothing to get too stressed about. The goal is that we're just going to make a strip, and it will be as wide as it's going to be. It's no big deal. Whatever it is what it is. Now, if you're cutting fabric, making scraps, you can cut these as big or as small as you want. You have that freedom when you do that. So whenever I take like a chain piece strip off of here, I just like to leave them kind of in order so that I don't have any confusion about where they go in all of this. So I'm just checking out. I saw there were some comments. I wanted to see what was there. People are saying where they're from, some Wisconsin. Sandra's joining from Mexico, which is awesome. Yeah, I'd love it if you guys shared where you're from. That's really cool. Thank you. So now I've got to press them. You can press all in one direction, which is what I did on the first one. In my case, I'm going to make myself a little bit more of a challenge. I'm just going to press towards the dark. So in this case, it will press towards the center. And then that way we'll press towards the center. So I will switch pressing directions at some point, but it really doesn't matter. You could press open if that's your thing. That works too. Our goal with these, and we'll see this when we start joining the next pairs, is to kind of just keep them in as straight of a line as possible. So we've got some Australians, some Californians who are in the rain, right? Yeah, I saw a video of that. It's crazy, that atmospheric river. I think the West Coast here got it too, but not nearly as bad. They have, but I was teaching on the weekend. Was it this weekend? I think so. With a guild in Victoria, and it was just pouring rain there, they said. So yeah, we got some California, Australia, Mexico. You're coming from all over the world. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. Okay, first round, pretty straightforward. I'm gonna sew this next round. Just double check. I know this one is kind of off and weird on the end here. you can see, hopefully that works out. If I have to replace it, then I'll do that. But, you know, we're staying relatively straight. I'm already predicting I'm going to be too short, but that's okay. Just cut more fabric, right? So now when I start joining these other pieces and I have these overlaps here, right? This is my seam here, and I've got excess in the seam allowance. I'm just going to trim that off with my scissors as I go. Because you don't want to not trim it and then forget and you press and then suddenly you have all this extra bulk you do not need. So when I'm doing improv work, I always have the scissors handy for exactly that purpose. It's just easier to grab the scissors and go for it. Okay, again, now I'm down to 3. Keep them in order. So there's that piece. There we go. Oh, we got Denmark, Florida. Look at that, Seattle. You're all over the place. You're all over the place. In a good way. I should clarify that. In a good way. Konai says it's sunny here on one side and cloudy on the other side. Finally getting quote unquote weather. I like that. We're always getting weather here in Calgary. Never a shortage of that. Oh, my cord is caught on something down there. Okay, let's keep going. So I'm gonna make these seams and then we'll see how long this is. I feel like it's gonna be a little bit short. Again, trimming off those extra bits. And I'll just do the other one before I press. Here, kind of eyeballing where that needs to go. Again, more extra bits that we don't need. Okay, so there's my strip right there. I'm going to give her a press. Again, I'm just quickly pressing towards the center, which is where my dark piece is. Okay, so now I have this. I'm looking at that and knowing that I'm going on the diagonal. I'm thinking, gosh, that's going to be too short. How am I going to test? So I'm going to take one of my blocks that's already to size. So from a couple of weeks ago, we had already done it to size. And just use this as a base. You could use your ruler. You could use the measurements on your cutting board. I'm just being easy and going with here. So if I place that diagonal corner to corner on my block, you can see I'm short on both ends. So I'm gonna have to quickly cut a little bit more fabric. Not a big deal. Not a big deal at all. So I have white there. So next comes this gray, pale gray. You can see where I had cut one, right? I'm just freehand cutting some triangles like that. So I've got 2 of those. And then I'll go with 2 of these ones, this fabric. So I'll just cut that, give myself, you know, something that's more resembling an equilateral triangle. Now that I'm going for size, I want to give myself a fighting chance with these. So I have those 2. Let's sew them on to either end and see what happens, right? So I'll actually make my life a little bit easier and chain piece these 2 So make that pair to go on here and then a pair on the other side. But actually I need that one to go, because remember that one was weird. So I'm actually not going to do that pair just because I want to make sure that sits the way I want it to sit. So I'll do the either ends and then go from there. So same thing that way. Okay. So again, we're pressing towards the center. I'm going to just, in the interest of time, use my little brayer and go there, and then we will add these ones here, and then that one's kind of wanting to be funny. If it doesn't make like a triangle, so be it. Which way should I do it? I don't want that way because that kind of curves that down, but if I go that way it curves it up. So I'm actually going to just kind of create a different wedge that will keep it a little bit straighter. So that's fine. It's all because that one white piece was a wedge there. So just a little freehand cutting on that side. Then we'll do the other side and press, and we'll test for size again. See where we're at. Now you can always measure what that corner to corner distance is for yourself and use that as a base. But I'm just making life easier, and you know, can we get there just doing it by eye? We will see. We will see. Alrighty. Now, there's no denying it. Kind of looks like a hot mess at this point. But I find a lot of work with scraps looks like a hot mess for a little while, and then you have to find the order again. So let's double check our size. And do I have enough to go corner to corner? I am so close, so close. So I can cut the difference and add a bit to either end, or I could just add on the one side. I'll do both sides. So let me see. No, those scraps are too small. No big deal. We'll just cut 2 more triangles, and then we have the full freedom that we need. And this is sometimes a lot of what happens in improv sewing, is that you have a plan and it doesn't quite go the way you thought it was, so you have to improvise your solution and roll with it. Just roll with it. There's no need to panic. We're just sewing. It's just fabric. There's no need for this to be causing stress. In fact, if it causes stress, it might be time not to switch hobbies or anything like that, but to look at what are the practices we do within our quilt making. So whether it's the practices, where we find the stress, what are we doing that's not helping us, not doing us any favors, right? Okay. We should definitely be big enough now, because I knew we were just a little bit short when we added on both ends. So you want to give that a really good press, right? Make sure it's as flat as it can be. You can use your pressing spray. I'm going to do that here. I am not moving the camera for pressing because this is pretty basic pressing at this point. But we're going to be cutting it. So you really want those seams to be laying as flat as they can. So we have that. One final check just to make sure. Right? I have more than enough. I'm hanging over on both ends. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually cut a strip. Now, it looks like this hot mess. I always say that within improv, within scrap quilt, you need to find the order. This is where we're finding order, is we're turning this into something that isn't so messy. So I'm going to take my ruler, just make sure you guys can see that. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to kind of play around with where it can be placed to maximize the width of this strip that I cut. If there's a couple little points that end up within my seam allowance, I'm going to go with that. So at this point, I could cut a 2-inch strip, and I have one little bit here where you'll see it after I cut, where I'm like 1/8 of an inch in with my seam allowance. Oh, I had another one. Maybe it's, no, that one's going to be too big, so I've got to play around. So I think it won't actually be, it will be 1 3/4, not 2 inches. But that's okay. It's going to be whatever it's going to be. Right? I did have a little slip there when I'm cutting, but I think I'm okay. Right? There's no right or wrong for how big this strip has to be. It's going to be the width it needs to be with your cutting, or your scraps, I should say. So in my case, that's 1 3/4. And then we just get rid of the rest of the scraps. Right, and now I have this nice, clean, straight strip that I can insert into a background square. So what size background square should you cut? What I like to do, I've pre-cut one just for the sake of time. What you're going to want to do is take your strip and place it, whether it's on an existing block or on your ruler, for the width, right? To say, I know my blocks are 9.5 inches, for example. So you're going to place it so that you can see what it looks like. Now, obviously we don't have seam allowances cut in here yet, but when I do this, I can measure and go, here, let's do it on an existing block to show you what I mean, right? I know this one is 9.5 inches. So if I place my strip on there and I measure from this corner to where my strip meets, right? That's 8 1/4. I'm going to want some seam allowance, some wiggle room and everything. So I would want to make sure I cut this to 9 1/4, at least a square 9 1/4. I'm going to check on other sides. You know, we're roughly the same there. So it's pretty close. It really will depend on how wide your strip is and what angle you place it on, right? You don't have to actually go totally corner to corner. I want to, but you can play with that angle a little bit, just not too much. We don't want to go horizontal or vertical. We still want it on an angle. And you still want your strip to go edge to edge. That's the point of this block. So yeah, you can play with it like that. If in doubt, cut your background square the size of what you want your finished block to be, unless this strip is really, really skinny, right? Like 1 inch or less. But if it's more than 1 inch, more than 1.5 inches, and you cut your background square roughly what you want it to be, even with your seam allowances, you should still end up with enough. In my case, just in the interest of time, I cut out a 10-inch square to be safe. Just wanted to be safe. So that's what we're going to do, is we want to insert this strip into our background. So I'm just going to, for the sake of ease, cut my square corner to corner. It's pretty straightforward. We're going to cut that corner to corner and insert our strip in there. Now this is where you want to make sure your strip is a little bit longer than your edges, because you don't want to sew it in and have that happen where you're going to be shorter, because then you're really going to have to come in, and if you didn't cut this background square big enough, it's not going to be big enough. What happens if you do that? Well, you can cut a new background square if you want, or you could just cut a strip and add it. It's not the end of the world. So now all we're going to do is sew in this strip. So I'm going to sew one side, press it, sew in the other. Pretty straightforward. You can pin that if you want. I'm pretty comfortable with it. I like sewing with the pieced strip on top, because then I can see where all my seam allowances are, make sure I don't flip them anywhere, just to ensure my block lays as flat as possible when all is said and done. So I have the first strip in there, and now I'm going to press it. You could press in either direction, but if you press towards your inset strip, you're just, there's a lot of seams and bumps and everything there, which you can do. You can handle that, no problem. It's just a heck of a lot easier to press towards your background, because it will just flip over, lay nicely. And then it really does look like an inset in there. So I'm just going over to the iron and the mat, giving that a quick press on the one side. Just be careful you're really pressing, not ironing that, because that's bias and you don't want to stretch it out too much if you can. So then we have the next one. We're just going to lay it on top, right? And sew down there. I'm going to sew like this. So again, I can see all of my seam allowances and make sure they don't get flipped. Whenever and wherever possible, I like to do that. So where the majority of my seam allowances are visible. It's just one of those little things that, you know, it's not the end of the world if you have a flipped seam. It really isn't. Do I fix mine if it happens? Never. Well, almost never, probably 99.9% of the time I don't fix it. But if I can minimize it, I will, right? Okay, so let's press this last one and share the block. Pretty straightforward block. I know, and you're going to see this when I show you the finished block here. There were a couple of others who've either emailed me or messaged me or said something on Instagram about having a really busy background fabric, that you feel like sometimes the rainbow gets lost. I think the same thing kind of happens with mine because it is a very busy background. It's a large scale print where everything else is smaller scale. I'm okay with it in my case. I'm totally okay with it because I kind of like the funky look and having that background fabric be that bit of a feature. If you're not, it's okay to change it at this point. It's okay to change it at any point, but I still think I'm getting, you know, a really nice visual impact with my rainbow and my background in there. So I'm content with it, but feel free to change it if you're finding that that isn't working for you. We can always change our minds. So there's our block. What do you think? Pretty straightforward. Using up the scraps in there, which is always a good thing, right? I'm going to go ahead and turn us around. Hi. And I will put this block, you don't need to see all the roof. Put this block with the other ones. Right? So that's week 5 of our Quilters Playcation Adventure Sew Along. We're boogieing along here. You can't see me. I was leaning and you couldn't see me. We're boogieing along, and I'm like, it kind of always shocks me. I remember when we did weekly a couple years ago, that was the thing. I was like, oh my goodness, like we're just feels like we're flying. It marks the year in quite a quick way. Kind of like keeping a diary or something like that. The days get marked, which is cool. It's also very, very cool. So that's week 5. I think, don't quote me on this. I reserve all rights to change my mind. But for week 6, next week, I think I'm going to bring in the curved scraps from week number 1. I'm pretty sure I said to keep them. If you didn't, that's okay. You just cut more fabric. Not a big deal. It's just fabric, remember. It's just fabric. So you can cut new fabric. You can find them. Doesn't matter. But I think I'm going to play with mine and see if I can come up with a cool block. No guarantees that's what we'll use, because maybe I can't come up with a cool block with them, but I'm going to try. We'll see in all of that. But otherwise, I will leave you next week. It'll almost be Valentine's Day. Almost. Wednesday. Okay. Just have to confess this. I had to call and make a bunch of appointments this morning for different things. All that. One of them was for my annual physical with the doctor. Turns out I'm getting a pap smear for Valentine's Day. Yay me. So at least it's not the day of our, I'll be in a good mood because we'll have hung out together the afternoon before, and that will just set me in a good space for the next day. But yeah, Quilters Playcation 2024 Rainbow Edition, week 5. So excited you're here with me, sewing along, whether you're on Instagram or YouTube. I do totally have the YouTube thing figured out, so I'm happy for that. And I've got my system for getting them up there. So if you're joining us on YouTube, hi. I'm so happy you're here as well. And that'll be it for, oh, someone has to go to the dentist. Killyfish has to go to the dentist. I'm guessing that's on Valentine's Day as well. So yeah, smart moves on our part, right? But it's where you got the time, you got to do it, right? So have a great week, everybody. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy your weather, whatever it is. If you're in that rain of California and the West Coast, go jump in a puddle. Look for the rainbows when the rain stops, because you know they're coming. And just have fun. Just have fun. It's all we can do. Life is one giant improv quilt. Really. It is. And so we just need to figure it out as we go. Enjoy the process, because the process matters more than the product at the end of the day. So on that note, I will say goodbye. Have a lovely week, and we'll see you online. You know where to find me. Cheryl Arkeson, Quilters Playcation. Love you all. Take care.